Hello there guys, how's it going? And welcome to this Dark Age quick tips tutorial. I already have a Dark Age build order guide out there which tells you how to set up your economy by sending which villagers to which positions and when, but this tutorial is more focused on how to actually take your resources in the most efficient way possible, how to do things such as boar luring, and just general little tips that will help you with your Dark Age start. Now, for those of you who are relatively new to the game, you might not know this, but getting a good Dark Age start is really important because a good Dark Age sets you up really well for the next 10 to 15 minutes of the game, which could actually be decisive if you're playing on an open map like Arabia here. Now, in this situation, I've kind of got us set up already with 11 population. I currently have 6 villagers on food, taking the sheep underneath the town center, and I also have 4 villagers out here on the left side taking the wood. I've also got the map on Explored. Now, normally the map is not on Explored, of course, but the reason I have it on Explored here is just so that we can see exactly what's going on, and the fog of war will not be a problem or a distraction during this video. So what I'm going to demonstrate is a few things, and I'm going to give you a few tips as we go along. And before I do the next thing, which is to lure this boar on the right side, I'm just going to go over a couple of things. So firstly, I've got my scout hotkeyed to control group 1, which you can't see because the game paused is covering it. But basically, I'm using control groups here to enable me to switch back and forth between things a lot easier. So by having my scout on control 1, if I go to the TC, if I press 1, it will select the scout. And if I press 1 again quickly, it will jump me to the scout cavalry. Now, what I'm going to be doing here is luring this first boar from the right side, and then I'll be demonstrating how to take a boar with your scout by attacking the boar with the scout and bringing it back to the TC after that. Now, this is something that is done by a lot of expert players, most notably on their enemy's boar, but we're going to be doing it on our friendly boar here just as an example, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this on Arabia. I'm just doing this for an example. So a couple of things as well before we do go and lure that boar and unpause the game. You might notice that currently I have just one sheep being taken under the town center. These guys are surrounding it in a nice circle, and it's really important to take one sheep at a time. The reason for that is because, well, it's twofold, really. First of all, it prevents your economy getting messy underneath the TC. Having lots of villagers blocking up the bottom of the TC is not good when you want to take your boar. It's also important because you want to keep the remaining sheep out of the way when that boar comes in. And the reason why these sheep are on the left side of the town center is because I'm going to be taking the boar on the right side. And the idea really is to keep as clear a path as possible between where the boar is and where it's going to land at the town center. And of course, the goal is to land the boar inside of the bounding box so that villagers don't have to walk when they want to drop off food, making it more efficient. Now, if I was to take the left boar first, I would actually have the sheep on the right side to make it as clear as possible for the villagers to come in. And that's going to make luring boar tons easier for you, and it's something that's very easy to achieve. It's also really important that you take your front boar first. Now, this is something that will come into play as you get better at the game. At low levels, it's not so important, but it's worth noting. If your boar is on the front and you've got a boar on the back, you'll always want to take the boar on the front first, because if your opponent comes to try and steal a boar, it's much more likely they'll find the one on the front of your base than the one on your back. So what we're going to do is unpause. We'll send one villager out to go and take a boar, and then we'll send the remaining villagers to go and take berries at the back by building a mill and such like that. So let's go ahead and do it. So the first thing I'll do is when this villager pops out, I'll hotkey him to number 2, control and 2. I'll then send my gather point to the berries so we can go and build a mill there. And I'll keep a close eye on these sheep, but I shouldn't need this sheep. So what I'll do is jump to the villager even, and he'll hit this boar twice. Now, one of the times the boar went back, but it should be okay. The villagers should be fine. Now, what we'll do is we'll drop the food from these villagers, and we'll task them to the boar, and we'll try and land this boar right underneath the town center by garrisoning the villager inside, and then sending all the vills out to go and attack. Meanwhile, the villager going to the berries will go ahead and build a mill, and then we'll send villagers out to the berries. This sheep here is going to rot away, unfortunately, and ideally you want to be taking those boar so that you don't have any rotting time on the sheep. The sheep should always be done, but it's okay if just a few food is lost as the sheep rots and the villagers focus on taking the boar down. That's absolutely fine. It's also worth noting that while you're taking the boar, your villagers will carry more resources. So these guys will have to be forced to drop off resources from time to time. As you will see, I don't have enough food here to keep making villagers all the time. So I just gather the villagers up, right click, drop the food, and then task them back to the boar again. And that way, the food is continuing to come in. And I can continue to make villagers comfortably and safely. Now, the next thing that I want to do here is make sure that my villagers are taking the berries efficiently. And by that, I want to have my villagers gathering the berries as close to the mill as possible. If they're gathering over here, it's no good because they've got to walk for miles. Now, what I would typically do at this point is send this villager to go and grab the next boar. But what we will do is we'll use the scout cavalry to try and demonstrate that. Now, I'll send the villagers underneath this TC here to go and grab the sheep. Now, I'm kind of going off build order because you typically wouldn't do this with your scout, but we're going to try and demonstrate that anyway. I'll send one villager out to wood, and then I'll send the rest under the TC to take the sheep over here. Now, ideally, we want to wait for the sheep to finish so the villagers don't have to block and stuff, but it should be fine. We'll pre-kill this sheep, and then we'll demonstrate attacking the boar and doing it like this. So what you do, 1, 2 hits, and then you run. Okay, now you're going to take quite a bit of damage, and with lag, this could be kind of hard. So this is why you don't want to do this. Now, you don't want to let your scout get too far away from the boar if you can help it. So as you bring it in, make sure he doesn't get too far away. This is easier to do if you don't have much to focus on, and then you drop your villagers like that into the TC. And unfortunately, I didn't quite pull it off, landing that underneath the town center. It's a really difficult thing to pull off. It takes tons of practice. And to be honest with you, it's not the kind of thing that I typically do either. And that boar now is slightly late because I chose to take it with the scout. Now, I wouldn't recommend taking a boar with your scout. I just did that as a demonstration of how it's done. And typically speaking, you would tend to take your enemy's boar with your scout cavalry. Now, if you're playing on a water map, such as Islands, or if you're playing on a map such as, what do you loom here? If you're playing on a map such as Team Islands, anything with water where your scout is required, then it's better for you to take your boar with your scout. But obviously in this situation, we really needed our scout to go and find the enemy. And so in this situation, it wouldn't be preferable to take the boar, and I would have taken it with the villager like I had just then. So we'll drop those villagers off and we'll do a 22 population feudal, which is good for a quick scout rush or something along those lines. If that boar had been a little faster, then we would have been able to obviously get the resources slightly faster and being able to click up slightly faster as well, maybe even on 21 population. Now, at this point, these deer here are in a really awkward position. Now, typically speaking, you really want to take all of your natural resources. And I'm not going to focus on playing the game now because we've kind of, we're just talking now about strategy and things like that. We'll let the eco just idle and do whatever. But as you see, on the left-hand side, these deer are a little bit far away, and I'll bring the scout over just to show you how difficult it would be to push these deer towards the town center. Now, if you're doing something like a scout rush or a fast castle, you really want to take your deer. And in this situation over here, we've got 4 deer, and I would recommend milling these guys, building a mill and taking the deer with the villagers. And that's mostly because they are out of luring distance. If you get your scout here, for instance, you can push these deer around. As you see, when your scout gets close, they run away. And you can use your scout to push these deer in towards the town center. Obviously, it does get harder with lag, and lag can make all of these tasks slightly more difficult. But yeah, I mean, if you had a lot of time, a lot of patience, you could eventually lure all of these deer in towards the TC. But the reason why that would be a pain in the ass is because they're just so far away, and with lag involved, it would be really, really difficult to push all of these deer in, and it would take a lot of effort, a lot of time, and that's time possibly better spent scouting your opponent in this situation, and you might be more tempted to mill those deer. Now, if you have the deer very close to your TC, and it's really easy to push them in, then I would recommend doing that. Now, that was pretty poor, because the deer went around the back. I was hoping it'd go in this way. But yeah, that's basically how you push the deer, and I would recommend doing it if you can spare the micro time. So now you'll obviously have to excuse the really messy eco. I can't really play and talk at the same time, sadly, so that's why I just kind of let that go to shit while we explained about the deer over on this left side. So that's some real quick tips for you in the Dark Age. Hopefully you guys found that informative and can put that to good use. And I plan to be doing more videos like this in the future to really cover the game mechanics and get you guys doing things as efficiently and effectively as possible in the game. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a little like, and I will see you guys next time.